Hey everyone, today we'll see how a janitor turns the tables and wins over the CEO. But the supervisor told him to stop dreaming, as new product development takes years. Not to mention the sky-high costs millions. No one believes a janitor could do it. But Richard was never one to back down. Since the supervisor wouldn't relay his message, he decided to call the CEO himself. The next day, when the supervisor was too busy, he finally made the call. When the secretary asked who he was, Richard replied without hesitation, "I'm the chief technician of janitorial services." The secretary paused, thinking, wait, isn't that just a janitor? Realizing he wasn't fooling anyone, Richard quickly got to the point. He asserted that he possessed a superb idea capable of risking the factory and pleaded with the CEO to give it a lesson. The secretary hesitated for a brief moment, but eventually she transferred the call to the CEO, who was utterly shocked. He never thought a janitor would actually watch his videos, and Richard popped up with a product idea. The secretary exclaimed, "You really think you have an idea to save the plant?" Richard nodded eagerly, thinking, "I'd better spill it then." He urged, "If the CEO really cares about his employees, he must hear my idea." Subtitles. Richard expedited the process and sent the product out the very next day. When the CEO saw that colorful chip, he hesitated but took a careful bite. It was spicy enough to make him sweat, but boy, that flavor completely won him over. Without wiping his hands, he called the factory. He announced to Richard that he'd be visiting the factory in 2 weeks for a face-to-face chat. Subtitle: When the senior executives learned that a janitor had gone over the head of his immediate supervisor to reach out to the president, they were all in a complete uproar. The factory supervisor was the angriest because when the CEO visited, he would see that the whole production line was in the red. At that very moment, Richard even began to question his own decision, given that it concerned the fate of everyone in the entire factory. But when his wife found out, she encouraged him, saying the handsome guy in the mirror would be the factory savior. "Go ahead, don't let this clown knock your confidence down," she said. Later, his wife took Richard to the library, teaching him the ins and outs of business. While he might not be guaranteed success, his life was full of love because of her. Times L, R half O amount, O acute times U amount, half micro, half 3 section pounded sign, I to acute micro, a circumflex R like a G thorn, times Oz out or tilde, Y acute T bruletta 5 0 pound. But neither of them could tie what a truly charming dilemma. His wife suggested, "Why not ask your dad for help? He's been regretting his past actions." Encouraged by his wife, Richard returned to his childhood home. His dad seemed to acknowledge his mistakes, and that moment broke down years of barriers. In the afternoon, the CEO luxury car rolled up to the factory door. Meanwhile, Richard was inside the car, rehearsing his speech over and over. Among the crowd, Richard stood confidently, ready to approach the CEO. If all that was just in his imagination, in reality, no one was rooting for him. However, the CEO treated Richard with great respect, shaking his hand and encouraging him to give his speech. Just at the very moment when he was feeling extremely nervous, a clerical error unexpectedly gave rise to a wave of uproarious laughter from the audience. An executive asked his market share, and Richard was completely at a loss. He fumbled nervously to recall what he had seen on the store shelves. Finally, he candidly admitted, I may not understand market share, but I know what respect means. That's the moment when you can find a taste of home on a store shelf in a foreign land. Mexican immigrants would flock to buy it since they make up 40% of California's population. The CEO stood up immediately, questioning his staff. Who among you noticed all this market share? Subtitles. In the end, he made the investment in the product without any hesitation, even in the face of so many opposing opinions. However, months went by, and sales didn't pick up at all, leaving Richard feeling hopeless. He started to doubt he would ever amount to anything, yet his mentor Clarence encouraged him not to give up. First, take a moment to ponder over what your next move should be, and do not hastily engage in self-discreditation. Until one day, his elder son said to him, "Maybe it's lacking in advertisements." Richard had an epiphany and decided to invest in advertising. But with funds dwindling, he knew he was running out of options.